Episode 11 begins with a flashback where Jade, who appears very thin and weak, is talking to Gizarm. Jade, seemingly resigned to his fate, tells Gizarm that he won't let Gizarm do as he pleases and that Gizarm will be the one to lose. Gizarm then asks, lose to whom? But Jade simply hangs his head and remains silent. Gizarm thinks Jade has died and immediately enters Jade's body. Gizarm is still curious about what exactly Jade did right before he died. Gizarm can use Jade's abilities and sees Jade's memories, viewing Jade's friends, but cannot see beyond that because their presence obscures his vision. Eventually, Gizarm decides not to dwell on it. As for him, the important thing is that Jade's body is now his. Returning to the present, Silpha, who has just defeated the level 8 demon, walks toward the original body that the demon had possessed and bows her head. Silpha believes that before the man's body was taken over by the demon, he was a renowned swordsman. Silpha also wishes she could have fought the swordsman in his original form. She then sees Ren Kroning and the other members of the Assassin's Guild, who are also mourning. Through her tears, Ren says that the swordsman must now be feeling happy. Seeing this, Silpha thinks that being assassins might not be the right job for them. Suddenly, there is a massive explosion in the river nearby. The water in the river seems to evaporate, and the temperature around them suddenly becomes hot. From afar, Lloyd is flying in the air, muttering that he regrets what he did earlier because the steam makes it hard for him to see his surroundings. Previously, Lloyd had been flying quickly, avoiding the barrage of magical spear attacks from Gizarm. As he dodged, Lloyd continued thinking about more efficient ways to deflect Gizarm's attacks. Gizarm's magical spears could penetrate 1 or 2 layers of Lloyd's barrier, and if they hit, the results would be fatal. Lloyd felt safe enough with the attacks because he still had barriers to protect him. Another attack from Gizarm was Cursed Speech, which could easily penetrate the barrier since it had no physical form. Lloyd could die instantly if it touched him. Fortunately, the Cursed Speech moved very slowly, so Lloyd had to shield himself and evade simultaneously. The most troublesome attack was the Shadow Wolf, which combined the magical spear technique with teleportation magic, making it hit the target unpredictably. Because of this, Lloyd was forced to keep moving at high speed to avoid all these attacks. Even a 2-second lapse in concentration would allow Gizarm to pinpoint his location and strike immediately. Currently, Gizarm's strategy was to keep attacking Lloyd from a distance to wear down his stamina and concentration. This made Lloyd angry, so he decided to counterattack with a high-speed technique and shoot within 2 seconds, faster than the Shadow Wolf. Lloyd used a dual incantation, creating a gigantic fire magic golem that moved towards Gizarm. However, Gizarm easily dodged it with his teleportation power. Lloyd's attack didn't stop and struck the river, causing the water to evaporate and creating a mist that obscured vision. Lloyd then used Kijutsu to detect Gizarm's presence, and Grimm reminded Lloyd to keep moving to avoid Gizarm's attacks. Lloyd moved quickly while thinking about what he should do. Lloyd then realized that earlier, he hadn't moved for several seconds, yet Gizarm didn't attack him with the Shadow Wolf. Lloyd also wondered how Gizarm could determine his location. He recalled the letter Gizarm sent to the Assassin's Guild headquarters, possibly indicating Gizarm knew its location. Lloyd also remembered Gizarm's words when ordering his subordinates to chase the Assassin's Guild members. Gizarm had said that the guild members were very skilled at hiding, and if they disappeared, even he wouldn't be able to track them. Lloyd now realized that Gizarm's ability to identify locations was actually just through his own sight. So, the river mist became very useful. Lloyd stopped moving, and indeed, no attacks came his way. Lloyd actually wanted to use his sword up close, but that would be noticeable and could be fatal. Lloyd then thought about what he should do next. On the other hand, Gizarm was just walking on the ground, not expecting Lloyd to evaporate the river and render him unable to see anything. However, he decided not to do anything now and would just wait for Lloyd. Sure enough, Lloyd came straight at him, but it turned out that Lloyd used the Parade of Dolls technique, creating numerous clay clones of himself. They all attacked Gizarm simultaneously. Gizarm couldn't detect which one was the real Lloyd. He just stood there and took the attacks. Some swords managed to stab Gizarm's body, allowing him to distinguish between real swords and those made of clay. Quickly, Gizarm fired his spears using the Shadow Wolf technique, and several magic spears struck Lloyd's body. Gizarm easily regenerated his body. Proudly, he said that magical attacks were ineffective against him, as were the physical attacks Lloyd attempted with his sword. Gizarm also mentioned that even if his brain and heart were destroyed, his body would regenerate immediately. This was how Gizarm stayed alive when Jade decided to end his own life. However, unexpectedly, the body of Lloyd that had been hit by Gizarm's magic spears was also just a clone. Gizarm was truly surprised that Lloyd had given his real sword to a clone and let it attack. The real Lloyd finally retrieved the sword. Meanwhile, Gizarm, surrounded by Lloyd's clones, still couldn't identify the real one. Gizarm tried to analyze and assumed that the real Lloyd must be above him. But when Gizarm looked up, he was suddenly attacked by a huge fire spell cast by the real Lloyd, who was right in front of him. However, the attack meant nothing to Gizarm, who quickly regenerated. Gizarm's burnt clothes were quickly replaced with new ones using his teleportation power. Internally, Gizarm muttered that he could teleport without seeing, as long as he knew the location, but he couldn't attack a place he didn't know. Gizarmi then prepared a large number of magic spears, planning to attack all of Lloyd's clones indiscriminately. In his view, this was the simplest method. A barrage of attacks was launched, and Gizarm saw one of his spears hit a barrier. He immediately teleported and eliminated the Lloyd inside that barrier, but it turned out that this too was just a clone. Gizarm thought Lloyd was deliberately doing this to deceive him. He continued attacking all the Lloyds there without stopping. One by one, Lloyd's clones were eliminated. It turned out that the real Lloyd was among the clones, using magic to make himself invisible and not using any barrier at all. Grim was very worried because Lloyd could be hit by the spears at any moment. Carefully, Lloyd tried to approach Gizarm with his sword. The sword Lloyd was holding now was a special sword he created, called the Spelltaker Sword. As the name suggests, this sword has the ability to absorb magic. After successfully absorbing magic, Lloyd could use the absorbed magical power to enhance his own or analyze the absorbed magic. Lloyd was very pleased with this sword, as it would greatly help him learn new magic he did not yet know. Then, at a very close distance, Lloyd managed to touch the teleportation magic with his sword without Gizarm noticing. Grim now understood Lloyd's goal was to analyze the teleportation power, something even Jade couldn't achieve in his lifetime. Grim thought it was impossible. However, Grim believed nothing could stop Lloyd from learning unknown magical techniques. Lloyd finally tried to analyze the teleportation magic. Lloyd's consciousness seemed to enter another dimension searching for Jade. After a while, a very bright light appeared before Lloyd. He saw several magical holes like black holes in the vast expanse of light. Lloyd observed them for a moment and then nodded, understanding something. In the real world, all of Lloyd's clones turned back into clay. Lloyd then deactivated his transparency spell, making Gizarm able to see him now. Gizarm realized that Lloyd had been hiding using transparency magic. He saw Lloyd wasn't using any barriers and had blood running down his cheek. Gizarm was confused about what Lloyd was doing. Lloyd then said that he understood now. Gizarm felt arrogant, thinking Lloyd understood that he couldn't defeat him. Gizarm then tried to persuade Lloyd to join him. Lloyd just sighed and said he didn't understand what Gizarm was talking about. Lloyd then used a metaphor. A lion never questions why it has fangs and claws. It's because they never feel uncomfortable with them. This makes their lives monotonous and boring. Lloyd said that all of Gizarm's techniques are like that. Gizarm was indeed born with extraordinary power, but that's all he has. Meanwhile, humans are weak creatures. They live by struggling with all their shortcomings. That's why they can create something extraordinary. For example, magic. They want to fly in the sky, they want to shoot fire, and so on. Through each magic technique created, it all started from their desires. That's why they become limitless. Gizarm ignored Lloyd's words and decided to attack him directly. He used teleportation magic to attack Lloyd, but unexpectedly, just as Gizarm shifted places, Lloyd moved very quickly and punched him right in the stomach. Lloyd used Kinjutsu at his punch, making Gizarm groan in pain. He had no knowledge of this Kinjutsu technique. What puzzled him even more was how Lloyd could predict the direction of his teleportation before he did it. Lloyd sat down while watching Gizarm writhe in pain. Lloyd said he was waiting to see what other techniques Gizarm would show him. According to Lloyd, Gizarm's magic spear and cursed speech were just higher-level techniques belonging to Grimm and Crow. Lloyd then challenged Gizarm to attack him. Gizarm was very angry, thinking that Lloyd's previous attack hitting him was just luck. Lloyd then asked what Jade had said in his final moments. Gizarm was startled but refused to answer, thinking it was unimportant. Lloyd then repeated Jade's last words, "You will lose." Gizarm seemed traumatized by those words and became very angry, using his teleportation magic again. But once again, Lloyd knew where Gizarm would appear, and he kicked and pummeled him repeatedly. Several times Gizarm used teleportation magic, and each time Lloyd hit him right where he appeared. Gizarm thought that Lloyd's attacks were not a problem for him. Even though the pain was immense, he could still recover. What confused Gizarm was just one thing: how Lloyd could read where he would teleport. Lloyd continued to pummel Gizarm with various magical and physical attacks. He then recalled his past life, where he had always been engrossed in studying magic books. He was always curious about the kind of person who first discovered such magic techniques. Was it a good person? A frightening person? A fun person? Because now all he could do was study it. The chance to converse with someone like that might come once in a lifetime if he were lucky. In his imagination, a mysterious person who looked similar to Jade handed Lloyd a black cloth. That made him very happy. Perhaps he was the only one with such dreams. Gizarm looked extremely angry. Then he showed that the Demon King could control the magical energy in the entire sky. He compressed that magical energy into one place, creating a very large magic sphere. He said that this technique would send anything it touched to another dimension. The magic sphere could send everything into a void. Gizarm named this technique the Mortal Dark Sphere. Lloyd and Grimm could only watch in silence.